Hello and welcome. Welcome to another midweek meaningful conversation. I'm here with Maxine and Paul, and if this is the first time you have joined us, we are three YouTube vloggers who just love a good chat. We just love it. So we make time most weeks to just get together and we pick a topic and we just have a chat. If you are watching not for the first time, if you're a returner, if you're an old friend, welcome, 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 and thank you for coming back. This week, we're going to be talking about the environment, going green, and if it is possible for us to live without a car. It's an exciting one. Before we talk about that, though, let's catch up on the week. Paul, how are you doing?
Yeah, really well. Tested negative for COVID at the end of last week, and I did 3 shows at the weekend. They were just absolutely brilliant. And when you've been on holiday for a while, you don't want to go back to work, do you?
No.
But yeah, I was dreading it, and they were lovely. They looked after me, and it was so good seeing the kids' reactions. And I came away buzzing from the shows at the weekend, and just so glad that I could work because I felt so ill the week before. But yeah, what have we done? It's very cold today. I've got the heating on the boat, and we've got the fire lit.
Oh, well, that sounds perfect. I missed off at the beginning. For anyone watching for the first time, Paul is a magician and also a really talented artist, and his channel is Narrowboat Life Unlocked. So just in case anybody's tuning in for the first time, thanks, Paul. Maxine, what have you been up to?
Well, we're getting rid of more furniture. We are now on a mattress on the floor. We've got a settee and a chair. That's about it now, and lots of boxes. But we just had enough, so we went away for the weekend to see some friends in Bicester and had a fantastic time. And then I went to the pictures yesterday to see West Side Story with my mum yesterday afternoon. I had the afternoon off and went and had a chill out with my mum, and it was beautiful. So yeah, we're getting closer and closer now to the moving day.
Brilliant, brilliant. And Maxine, your channel is Never Too Late, Our Journey. Yeah.
Correct.
And anyone watching for the first time, Maxine's taking that massive step of moving from a house onto a boat, which is being built, isn't it? And will be ready.
Yeah, very nearly ready.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Oh, and just quickly to introduce me, I'm Lisa from what's my channel? A Life Full of Meaning. I forgot it for a second. I was A Life Full of Meaning. We used to live on a boat. Now we're in a house, but maybe looking for another boat. Well, there's no maybe about it. We definitely are. Anyway. And our week's been fab. We went up to Lancaster. I went to a brilliant exhibition called I Am Witch. Fascinating. Got stuck on the motorway for 6 hours, got stuck in a lift for a short time as well. It was all go. But yeah, the week is unfolding lovely. So, Paul, this week we're talking about the environment, and this is a subject that you chose.
Yeah, it's something that we've always tried to do our best. And, I think a lot of people who've probably watched the BBC documentaries by David Attenborough, when those, I don't know, I've always been into wildlife, as you know, and nature, and always done my bit for the environment. But after watching that, with that poor polar bear was stuck on one piece of ice, and he couldn't, he's using all his energy just to get from one piece of ice, swim and get to another to find his food. And I must have got on my friends' nerves for about a year or two after that. In fact, I still do, because if I go and visit them and they've left lights on in another room, I'll say, polar bears.
Yes.
And we always recycle. And we actually, years ago, we went down to Cornwall. Anthony nearly got a job in Cornwall, and we found a house that we loved, and it had a medium-sized garden. But straight away we were thinking, we could get a veg plot and grow our own vegetables and be self-sufficient and get solar panels and maybe a wind turbine. And then when we got back home and the job didn't come off, I thought, well, why don't we do that anyway? And I think, being on a narrowboat, we do feel like we're making a smaller footstep ourselves, carbon footprint, because although we do have a solid fuel fire, which isn't great for the environment, we do feel that you know, we are doing our bit. We still recycle, and even though there aren't that many recycling points along the canals, and we know the reasons why, we still collect our recycling till we're passing somewhere, or we can drop it off our parents and get it recycled. We still try to do our bit. And also, when we moved onto the boat, because of lockdown, all my work was cancelled, so I decided to sell my car. It was a fairly almost brand new car. I'd only had it for a few months, and I thought, well, what's the point? We've got one car between us, and Anthony usually works in the week. I usually work at the weekend, so I can just borrow his car. And we've managed for 18 months to do that.
Well done. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. There's a lot to unwrap about the environment, because it affects us all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the first question I've got for us all is, how do we feel when we think about the environment? Now, Paul, you mentioned the polar bears, and I just want to find out whether it triggers anybody else's anxiety when you watch stuff like that on TV, because it triggers me. I watch those David Attenborough, programs, and I'm full of doom. I'm like, we're doomed. It's like, dude, I need the program to end on a note of like, it can all be, we can be saved. It's all going to be okay. But thinking about the environment does make me quite anxious when I think about how big the problems are. And I just wondered if anybody else experiences that same anxiety. So I was quite happy not happy that you said about the polar bears. It makes me realise I'm not on my own with worrying about this. What about you, Maxine? What do you think?
It does me. I mean, when you're going for walks and you see the amount of plastic and rubbish that people just throw around, and I mean, I walk, because we live near the canal, so at the moment, obviously not living on it, but I walk on the canal every single day with my dog, and the amount of times that you have to pick up or unravel fishing wire and things like that, because the damage it does to the ducks and everything, people don't think about it, and you constantly picking up, plastic and cups and things, and masks these days, because they're everywhere. And if animals pick those things up, they will damage them and they will hurt them and probably kill them. And the same at the seaside. Whenever you're out at the seaside, the amount of rubbish that comes through these days, it's scary. And I just think in years to come, we're just going to have a planet full of rubbish, because nobody does anything to get rid of anything these days, and they don't see anything wrong with just throwing stuff down and not putting it in bins. I know near us there's a seat, and then there's a bin right next to it where the kids and young adults and everything sit around this seat, and every morning I go past and there's cans and rubbish, and the guys are having to come and collect that, and they couldn't put it in the bin. And it's just it's mindfulness. It's just they just don't think about it. They just it is sad.
Well, rubbish actually is Glenn, with his job that he's doing, picking up rubbish, and of course he then takes it to the tip and they weigh it in, and some days he is picking up 1/4 of a ton of rubbish, street rubbish, that is, just stuff that's been left in the street. It has made us realize that is a huge problem. But although rubbish is unsightly, it's not some of the biggest problems facing the environment, is it? Because that's the thing. It's like, it's such a big topic, and that's where I think I feel so helpless at times. Have apologies if you've heard this story before, have I ever told you about years ago when I was an environmental activist? Have I ever told you that?
You've told me about it, and I only found out recently.
So apologies, Paul, for listening to this again, but years ago I was an environmental activist, but also an activist on many for many different causes. But the environment was something that I was really passionate about. And I spent a lot of time. I mean, I'd protest. I took my kids to protest. We would boycott certain brands. I was actively engaged in saving the world. I mean, it was a mammoth task. I would say so myself. It was like, it kept me busy. And I was angry a lot of the time. I was angry at all this injustice that was happening in the world. And I spent so much time, and I don't regret any of it, but it made me really unhappy. And then it was Mr. Warner with his wisdom of, like, you know, one day he said to me, like, you can't save the whole world, but you can change your world. And it was just such a simple way of changing the way that I looked at everything, from feeling I want unempowered. That was the word. I felt unempowered. However much I fought to make the world a better place, it never was. There was always the next thing and the next thing. And to realizing that I could make change in my world felt incredibly empowering. And it was a massive change for me, from this sort of eco warrior, everything's doom and gloom and I've got to change it, and to showing up in my world thinking that the little changes I can make a difference. That is a long story. Sorry for that. And I can't even remember why, like, what the question was I was going to ask you. But what I want to say, these big problems, some of them have small and local answers to them. So are there any areas in your life where you feel positively that you can make change? Well, Paul, you said giving up a car, and you know, as being a big step for you.
Yeah. And I mean, I suppose taking one more car off the road, I do feel like, you know, and we're very lucky. We've got great neighbours in the boating community, and they know when Anthony's at work, I'm in the boat, and they'll often text, "Do you need anything from the shops?" And that's great, because they're nipping to the shop anyway. They're picking up a couple of items for me. It saves me going in my car and, you know, using that fuel to get there. But again, I think we can all do our bit. And you were talking about litter, the both of you, and I'm getting wound up because it drives me mad. I feel like Great Britain is one of the dirtiest countries on the planet, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've got one of the most beautiful countries on the planet. And why do the British people, and I can't even say it's young people, I've seen people of all ages throwing litter out of cars, throwing McDonald's wrappers out of the car, and say, you know, that's acceptable. It's not. What can be done? And I think it needs to be ingrained into children at a young age in school, that they're doing their bit to wreck the environment and the beautiful scenery of this country and any other country that's watching this. Let us know if you think that litter is a problem, because the places that we go to, I'm always amazed there's no litter. And quickly on the same subject, going through Wigan town centre on the canal, it was heartbreaking to see ducks swimming amongst plastic bottles and waste off cans and footballs. And I think we can all do our bit locally, and just, you know, if it's a litter pick and collect litter, I'm willing to do that. And I think maybe we should all do our little bit. But yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting, isn't it? The thing about young people being the guilty party here is, I always think, like, my kids are really anti-litter, and that's because they grew up with us. Like, we'd never just discard something like that. I think this is something that kids learn. So kids have learned this from someone, you know, and I think it just continues, doesn't it? Because you know, it continues.
Definitely.
Sorry, Maxine, go on.
No, I was just going to say the same, Lisa. I always say that they've got to learn not to throw stuff on the floor. I mean, I would never have dreamt of it. My mother would have clicked me around the ear years ago. And so you just automatically put it in, and it is so annoying when people just throw it out. There should be a way of especially with like the KFCs, McDonald's, and because the amount of, and Greggs around here, we get a lot of those on the floor. There's got to be a way of either fining the company or putting a tax onto it of some sort. They've got to do something to pay for somebody to come out, and because you don't see people going around and picking up litter or anything anymore like you used to. Where I remember seeing that we used to have it around the towns and everything. There always be somebody or a couple of people going around, but you don't see that very often these days.
No, you need to go to where Glenn works. You'll see him.
I say Glenn actually on his video, he always does it, but it always amazes me when we watch your videos how much rubbish we get. It is, I mean, it's unbelievable. But I've done the same as you as well, Paul, because I work from home anyway. So 2020, I got rid of my car, so we've just gone down to one car because I just couldn't see. It was wasted money, obviously, having the car. And we can manage to live, and I just walk more these days.
Yeah. Can I just make a quick suggestion? I mean, I've said this before, and why don't companies do this? 90%, well, I'd say all the litter that we see on the floor that's from fast food restaurants is from drive-through. Why can't those restaurants print the registration plate onto the paper packaging?
Yeah, we say that.
And then if it's found on the street, it's come from that vehicle, they should be fined. Is that not an easy solution?
Yeah.
I mean, it is, but
who's going to police it?
Yeah, and also, I want to look at it from a different angle completely, right? So, one summer's day, I went for a walk with my friend Miramar, and it was a Monday morning, and the parks had been full the day before. It'd been a beautiful weekend, and we walked through the park, and where the bin was, it was overflowing. You know, people would wanted to put their stuff in the bin. They'd walked it to the bin. The bin was full, and people had started putting, you know, their bags and stuff. There'd been a lot of big family picnics and stuff, and it was all around the bin, and it was chaos because then the birds and the squirrels had come along. It was like, and we had this conversation. It was really memorable, and we looked at this mess, and we were like, well, what is the answer here? What is the answer? And we were like, is it more bins? Is it more litter collection? Is it taking it home? And then I made an amazing connection. I looked at the litter, and it was all packaging for food and drink. You know, it was all food packaging or drink packaging. And then I thought, do you know what? If these people had made an old-fashioned picnic, right, obviously there'd still be packaging, and, you know, well, they'd be at home and hopefully be able to recycle that. But what if they'd made a proper picnic? There'd be less of that packaging.
Yeah, definitely.
And I thought, are we looking at it all wrong? You know, the answer's not more bins. It's not more people to collect the rubbish. It is actually dealing with packaging at source.
Yeah.
Which actually brings me on to something I was going to say, what I did yesterday, which I found a new to me, zero waste shop near my mum's. And it was a joy to shop there. A joy. And I think some of the problems that we see as like litter in our streets or these annoying problems, actually the cause is rooted way back down the chain. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
Anyway, picnics are the answer to everything.
Yeah, I love picnics.
Right.
Deb's made a good comment.
Who's made a good comment?
Deb, bring on the mood food movement.
I like that.
Yes, absolutely. Hello to everybody watching from all around the world. Janet, Mott, it's 4:20 a.m. here. Well, you know, hopefully we'll send you back to sleep. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. Oh, I've just clicked on one. It's Keith. Sorry you're late. Don't worry. We're late this week as well. So let me just Deb says, very annoyed with our Australian government for trying to get out of committing to fixing climate change. Jance, but Mr. Warren is such a wise man. You're so lucky to have him. I am. Honestly, I'd be a mess without him. So Deb says it's a worldwide problem. I think we're talking litter. Yeah. Kelly says, I always told my kids that if they can't find a bin, either put it in their pocket or a bag till they get home and it can go in the rubbish. Yeah. It is frustrating. That's for sure. But it's, for me, it's a visual annoyance, litter. It's there. It's a visual annoyance. But as I said, I just feel the problem is way down the chain, and it's to do with our attitude to the way we buy our food, prepare our food, and how we do that. Anyway, what one action, and you've both given up your cars, so I feel slightly on the back foot here, right? What one action do you think that you can do that will have the biggest impact? I've got one. Yeah.
I don't think I've got one action. I think it's just be conscious of the environment when we make choices.
Yeah.
For years, I couldn't believe it took so long for supermarkets to ban plastic bags. We went to Australia 20 years ago and everybody had their own bags, fabric bags. That was 20 odd years ago. And it's took us, hasn't it, about 20 years to catch up.
Yeah.
I think we can all do our bit. But I think also, I'm a great believer when I see on Facebook somebody is protesting about something and wants a signature. It's so easy to think, I'm not going to make a difference. I'm not going to sign that and send it off. But, as collectively, as a massive group of people, we can make a difference. So I think it's just be conscious of our environment and do everything that we can, and maybe pressure our councils and governments to do what they can.
Good idea.
Yeah. True. I want to come back to plastic bags in a minute, Paul, actually, because you make a brilliant point. Maxine, what is there one action that you're taking or you want to take that you think can have a big impact?
Well, going over on, because we're obviously moving on to the boat, I want to be as eco-friendly as possible. So we're not having any more bottles of shower gel or anything like that. I'm going over to the eco soaps and that's going for all that type of things. And I mean, we're careful these days anyway. Again, you just said about plastic bag, we won't have any plastic shopping bags. There will all be the material bags and everything like that. So it's just keeping everything. And if we can buy anything loose, I'd rather get everything loose. And because I've got cotton bags that we can put stuff in and things like that, so that we won't have lots and lots of cans and plastic bags with food in and that type of thing. That's the way we're going to try. And we won't have any car at all because we're selling the other car as well. That's going. That is
brilliant. That is brilliant. The one for me is clothing. So I once read, and the statistics, I'm not going to get these right, but I once read that clothing is like the second biggest polluter. So the production of clothing, if you think about the whole chain from growing to creating fabric to
shipping it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking the horrible conditions, when you buy cheap clothes, someone's paying the price. And it's not us, it's either the environment or someone else in another country, is paying the price to buy cheap clothes. And I've read so much about how clothing is one of the biggest, polluters and problems in the term of waste. If we look at how many clothes most people have in their wardrobes, I think for me that's the one where I'm trying to make a difference. So not buying new clothes at all, wearing my clothes until they are worn out, and that is just like such a different way to look at it, because it's just in our society, clothing is cheap, and I mean, what do you do when you feel down? Buy a new top.
I'll get your haircut.
Yeah, oh yeah. So Deb's just said clothing is a disaster. Yeah. I think there's so much wrong with clothing, the whole textile industry worldwide, in terms of pollutants and in terms of environmental and social problems. It's a massive subject, and I'm not going to do it any justice, because I just know that it's a really big problem. So,
but haven't we talked about this kind of thing before? We both read the book A Year of Less. I don't know if you've read that, Maxine.
Yeah.
But I think it's an excellent book, and that Year of Less, it's all about possessions and buying things we don't need. Like, I can find them all off: DVDs, CDs, books, clothes. And if we all cut back and just buy things that we need rather than we want, I think that would be doing a great thing for the environment as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know, the other day I drove past this massive warehouse that was being built. It was huge. And I looked at it, and I have this, whenever I drive past anything like that, I think, haven't we got enough stuff in the world already? Do you know what I mean? Is there, I once read that when it comes to baby stuff, you know, pushchairs, cots, whatever, there's more of those in the world than, you know, there are children. And like we could like, if everybody stopped making any, we'd be fine for years. You know, it was you know, the big chip bringing in a really valid question here. And if you cut down on purchasing clothes, we'll have a massive consequence with the workforce producing the garments. Who will feed these people and put a roof over their heads? Just saying. It's a really valid point, because it's that whole, we're keeping people in jobs. I've thought a lot about it. It may not surprise you. I have thought about it. So I once read, it might have been actually a TED talk, I can't remember, but somewhere I heard that, you know, when you buy cheap clothing from, say, Primark, and as I said, you know, someone's paid the price for it being cheap for us. And this person said, how much do you think it would cost to make a better quality garment that that someone would have been paid a decent wage from? And I was thinking, another £2, another, what would it cost? And it was so ridiculously low. It was like 10 pence or something, you know. And I just thought, we can still, you know, employ these people, but we have to shift of what we think is a reasonable price to pay for something. And it also reminds me of a quote I heard a couple of weeks ago, and I just loved it. And it was about buying quality rather than, you know, low quality items, but buying them again. And someone had said that their mum always used to say, we're too poor to buy cheap, meaning buy quality, and it's got to last.
Yeah, our friend says, buy cheap, buy twice. And
absolutely. This is good to read. The Big Chip, as you can tell from my name, hopefully you can, I'm a fast food producer in fish and chips. I freaking love fish and chips. I'm very responsible for all litter in my locality, which is a beautiful seaside town of Arnside. Oh, well done. I'm
often in Arnside, so we'll be looking for that chippy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, when I went up to Lancaster, the Big Chip said that we weren't far from them. So I was like, I wish we could have done. So Kelly says she's working on eliminating shampoo, dish and laundry soap containers. Oh, the zero waste place I went to yesterday. Oh, it's just such a joy to be there. And they had these massive drums of all the liquids, and you know, pump them into your container. I love it. It just makes me feel, even before I brought anything, I just felt better for being
a
in
better
there.
person because you're in there. Yes.
Yeah. And I've got to say, Anita Roddick, the founder of the Body Shop, do you remember her?
Yeah.
She once said something that stopped me in my tracks, and I don't know why I've never thought of it before. She once said, there is no away. So when you say I'm throwing something away, there's no away. It still exists.
Yeah.
And that shocked me. And when you think every plastic straw that you've used in your whole lifetime still exists.
Yeah.
It blows my mind in a bad way. In a bad way. Yeah.
Plastic bags. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's scary when you think back to everything you have in the house, how much stuff just will be there in years and years to come.
Yeah. It still exists. And I think that about toothbrushes as well. Every toothbrush I've ever owned still exists out there.
I've just bought bamboo ones.
Oh, well done, you.
I don't know what they're going to be like, but I've just gone over to bamboo for the first time.
Yeah, excellent. Firehorse. The 1970s, 80% of clothing was manufactured in the UK. Now it's only 10%. Yeah. And someone's
comment. Sorry.
What's that? Yeah, go on.
Lorna's comment about clothing swap in Chipping
Road.
Remember the days of jumble sales and swap shop with Noel Edmonds?
Yeah.
Better than landfill, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jumble sales used to be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to plastic bags, right? Because you made such a good point, Paul, that like when you went to Australia, 20 years ago, people were using their own bags. It frustrated me when the government brought in the legislation. It frustrated me how long it took.
Yeah.
Because as soon as the government brought in a law that said that plastic bags, single-use plastic bags, everything had to be chargeable, we all went, no, I'm not paying 5p or 10p or whatever. I'm taking my own, right? and then I saw about 6 months after that a statistic that said how many bags had been saved, how many less bags we'd used. And I just thought, why couldn't we have done that 5 or 10 years ago? And millions.
How much warning do we need as a species to say this is going to happen? If you've not got your own bags, then you're going to have to pay for it. You should have done it straight away.
No. And this goes back to what we first started talking about when we watched the films, on TV, or I once organised or helped organise a film festival for Transition Town in Northampton, and we showed several films, and they were just like, the scientists were like, stuff needs to change. And exactly what you just said, how much notice do we need? How much do we need to say, change your behaviour? So, next question. If the government could legislate an action like the plastic bags, what do you think it could be? What one thing would you like to see in law? I mean, don't feel that you've got to come up with a great answer. And this sort of conversation, it's not about sound bites. So we don't have to have all the answers, because I've just asked that question and I'm thinking I don't even know what the answer is. So
maybe a tax on plastic bottles. Because like you said, Maxine, Anthony used to make his own soap, actually. So we've started to use soap in the shower, especially when, your grey waste is going straight into the canal. I think you're more conscious of where that waste is going. So again, a viewer spotted that we were using normal washing up liquid, and it's something that we'd meant to do. But when they said, oh, please, can you use eco-friendly washing up liquids that don't harm the water life, we did it straight away. And it does cost a little bit extra, but we'd rather do that. It's not extortionate.
That goes back to paying the real price for something, doesn't it? So I wonder, do you think it should be law Do you think what should
It's
it be
difficult,
law?
isn't it? We should all have the free choice. If we want to buy plastic bottles, it's more convenient. But yeah, I can't. Maybe, do you remember everybody used to have aerosol deodorants? You don't see them anymore, do you?
Because it was made law, wasn't it?
Yeah. And the roll, again, I went to America 20 years ago and they were using roll-on deodorants then. So why has it took so long? So yeah, maybe, we've got rid of aerosols. I think there should be something done about plastic packaging, because that's such a big saver of the environment, I think.
I think the only way they can do it is like put an increase on the cost. If you're buying something in plastic, if they don't want to stop it completely, put an increase, so that item's going to be a lot more expensive because it's going to take longer and be more difficult to get rid of. So that if you are buying it loose, you're taking your own bags and everything else, you get it slightly cheaper, because then people will be more inclined to do it that way.
And
go on, Paul.
Sorry, wasn't there a thing? There was a movement a few years ago where people were going into supermarkets and taking everything out of plastic packaging, the fruit, the veg, and everything, and just leaving it in the supermarket, just to prove a point of how much waste there is. And
that's like the sort of thing I used to do when I was
Lisa. You've helped save the world, Lisa.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't think I did. I had something there that I was going to say. I know. It's about going back to packaging, going back to the zero waste shop experience that I had yesterday. So when I picked my mum up and I said, "Mum, we're going to a zero waste shop," and she was like, "What is it?" And I explained the concept, and she goes, "Oh, we used to have that like years ago, called Weigh and Save. Do you remember?"
I remember them.
I was like, I do. They had these big barrels, and you could get everything,
pet food, everything. Cereals.
And I made an observation, and I come from a place of real privilege, right? Because a lot of zero waste shops, everything's like organic. It's a gorgeous experience, and I love it, right? I love it. As I said, I walked in there, I just felt at home. I loved the smell of the place, the feel. I loved all their organic everything all along the things. And then there's someone like my daughter who I met there and showed her around. And because she's on a real tight budget, she's not bothered if spices are organic or a pasta was organic. She's not bothered. She just needs to feed her family at a good price. And what I realised with the old Weigh and Save didn't have any of that, like you're saving the environment and you're doing good, because nobody in the 80s, to be honest, was thinking about their plastic packaging.
No.
The main thing with that was that you're saving money, right? It was a completely different feel. And I thought, why are we only seeing zero waste in the terms of these are people that with more disposable income, or they're they're choosing this because they can choose it. Do you see what I mean? We're making that choice from a point of privilege rather than having to feed our families on a really restricted budget. So it just made me wonder why brands like that went out of favor and have not come back in so that they're more accessible to everybody. Am I rambling? I feel like
I think I agree with you there, Lisa, because I mean it must be cheaper for the companies because they're not having to box them all up or put them in tins like that. They just put them in packing great big as you said,
barrels or whatever.
So it must be saving their money in the long run.
Yeah. You're making a really good point there, Lisa. And it's like, if you go back years ago, every little village had its own local greengrocers and supermarket. And I was so chuffed. And considering we've been traveling for over a year on the canal, right next to the canal, there was a little fruit and veg shop. And you walked in, the smell was amazing because everything's so fresh. And the ladies in there were dead friendly. And maybe I paid a little bit more for the fruit and veg, but it was just 5 times nicer than what you can get in a supermarket. And maybe that's the thing, isn't it? It's a bit like Amazon in a way. There must be so much waste with Amazon. You can order 3 things on Amazon and they'll come through 3 different drivers on 3 consecutive days. You know, gone are the days where everything used to be packaged together, and you'll get a great big cardboard box for a little. Well, I get a packet of pencils, and it's in a massive cardboard box. You think, what a waste! But then also the village communities and the local shops, they've all gone, haven't they? And I think that, you know, to walk to your local shop used to be, I don't know, it was a nice memory for me. I used to walk to the local shop with my mum, and she'd chat to the neighbours, and she'd go to the churchyard, and you'd chat to the shop owners. Most of the supermarkets, let's be honest, you can go in there and buy your items and speak to no one because the self-service tills. Let's bring back the village shop.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's all about the experience for me. I mean, go on, Maxine.
Because I went down to Bicester at the weekend, and there's about 3 of them. I was saying to Steve, you don't see that with us any longer. We used to have greengrocers and be able to go shopping from them in Retford, where I live at the moment. But there's nothing like that, and it was just so lovely to be able to go into a really lovely and get the fresh, you know, fruit and veg straight away.
While we're on the subject of food, I had a great experience this week. We've had a new community fridge open on the estate. Have you ever heard of a community fridge? No. So sometimes they're called community larders and community fridges. So they differ from food banks. Okay, so food banks, they're like means tested for people that are experiencing food poverty. Okay, community fridges are stuff that's left from supermarkets that would otherwise go to landfill. And basically they open up, they take the deliveries in, and then people turn up. Some of them work in different ways. Glen, there's one where on the estates where Glen works, and people pay like a small subscription, and then they go and they just help themselves. The one on our estate, you don't have to pay anything. There is a box for like donations, and you go in and you just take. They split it into. There'll be like some fruit and veg or some packaged stuff or what, and they split it into things. And you take like one of those, one of those, one of those. And the great thing is it's stopping food from going to landfill. So it's brilliant. It was such a joy to go there this week. And then I find myself, if I make something using something that was, you know, that I've stopped from going to landfill, and you make it into something delicious, it just gives me so much joy. I tell you, it's just like, yes, we are fixing the food production and the whole food system in this country. I feel is broken, and it's just tiny ways that we're getting. We're sort of regressing it. So
and that's another thing, isn't it? Food waste. I hate food waste because you know, there'll be the odd time where we say let's get a takeout, and it drives me mad because we've got food in the fridge that gets thrown away, and you think of not just the cost, but the cost to the environment to produce that food that you're throwing away then going into landfill.
That's it. And food in landfill is you know, that's where you get your methane. That's where it becomes, you know, such a problem. Oh man, there's so much to say on all of this. I just, you know, there is so much to say, and you know, there's so much to fix. It's difficult sometimes to keep our focus that we can make a difference, you know, with our small actions. I'm just going to have a quick look on the comments, and then we're going to wrap it up because Maxine, you've got work to do.
No, it's not. I don't do it very often.
Firehorse said some countries have recycling points where you receive a voucher to encourage to recycle. Yeah,
that's good idea.
I know. there's part of us that think it shouldn't take that. It shouldn't take that incentive. But if you look at the whole plastic bag thing, where we were like, I'm not paying 10p for a bag, I'll take my own. You know, sometimes it does take an incentive to bring about change. So Sally said Amazon are a nightmare for packaging. Tiny Living keeps orange juices in cartons, washing powder in big cartons, put shampoo in cartons, alcohol in cartons. So yeah, maybe like cardboard cartons are the answers. Sally's, but yes, village shops next to the canal. And Deb's got right to the heart of it here. The marketing people have a lot to answer for. Yeah. So Sally's put, this is much better than loose women.
Have you seen Naughty Squirrel? Because they've said in America, Amazon gives an option to bundle purchases waiting an extra day or two for delivery. I've noticed that in the UK now. They've started doing that when I've bought a couple of bits, which is good.
Yeah. Ah, that's excellent. That's excellent.
I've noticed that the other day.
To be honest, well, just one more from Firehorse here. Whilst there's money in this world, we will never correct the issues. I think that can make us, it feels like it's not a thankless task. It just fits. Those issues seem so big, and that's why when we bring it back to ourselves and our personal responsibilities, that's where for me, I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, but for me, that's where I feel I can make the biggest difference. And what we've got to remember, we may feel powerless against giant corporations. And this is from a woman who had a vendetta against Nestle for many years. My kids ate nothing Nestle for decades. and honestly, they make loads of stuff. My kids are like, no, can't have it, you know, like that. But we do have power as consumers. We have power. Every time we spend money, we have power. That is overlooked, I think, sometimes. So we choose every time we spend something where we're, you know, where we're putting our power. And I think we often forget that. I forget it, and I know it, and I forget it. So I think for me, that's the biggest one, where I spend my money. So
I think if everybody can do their own little bit, I know it's not going to make a huge difference, but it will make a difference eventually. So we've just got to all be mindful.
I think it will, because what do they call it? Economies of scale, don't they? Yeah. If we all did something, just look at those plastic bags. That figure of like the amount of plastic that was taken out of, you know, production in sort of single-use plastic bags was massive. We did see change. So I think we can do it. We can. So guys, I just want to say thank you so much. I've done a lot of talking today, and I'm sorry for that, because like this is a subject I feel so passionate about. So thank you, Paul, for suggesting it. And I think there's topics within this conversation that we could easily spend, you know, another hour on. So I'll look forward to revisiting that. Thank you so much for joining us and for taking part, for all your comments. We really appreciate them. It really brings this to life as a great conversation. So thank you. Thank you. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.